Welcome to Beyond Books, the podcast where we deep dive into the most complex and rapidly evolving education and the mental health. I'm Chetan Jaiswal, your host, where we work around with the children on guiding them, students, teachers, and parents, giving them the right pathway, how they can really overcome the academic challenges to emotional hurdles and technological shift.
Hello, Chetan.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to meet you.
Wonderful.
And I'm sorry we had hijacked your office.
Not at all. Wonderful meeting you as always, and working with your team of MyPeegu is always been a pleasure. So today we do a podcast.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to be asking a lot of interesting questions and hear your thoughts.
So you can ask me interesting questions. Let's see what I answer.
Yes. Thank you once again, ma'am. आज हमारे साथ में एक true veteran है जिन्होंने almost nearly around 3 decades she has dedicated to the education system. Mrs. Sandhya Awasthi, who is a principal of Delhi Public School, Greater Noida. Nearly 28 years she has spent where she has seen it all. चाहे वो एक educational reforms हो, चाहे एक generational shift हो, या फिर unique challenges जो बच्चे face करते हैं, and along with coming out with the most appropriate solutions too. Sandhya ma'am, it's pleasure to have you. It's my honor, and always I was excited to meet you and get a lot of learning. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Chetan. Very happy to be with you to have this conversation.
I think एक सबसे important चीज़ मेरे हमेशा जहन में आती है मैम, because I've known you for a longest period of time, and you played a very crucial role in my journey. Right, I've learned a lot.
I'm very happy to have had any influence over your journey, which I'm very proud to see.
Right. तो मैम एक चीज़ मैंने आपकी जितना जाना है आपके बारे में कि एक बैलेंस जो वर्ड है आपके लाइफ में बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कैरी करता है, राइट? तो अब हम जब बच्चों की बात करते हैं तो हाउ डू यू सी बैलेंस प्लेइंग इन देयर लाइफ?
So ideally, a child, in my opinion, should be a balance of many parts. So I always say, to make a whole child, you need to have the desire to perform well academically, but also to be emotionally balanced, right? It's important for the child to play very well, to have interest in some sport, then to have a cultural activity that you should be part of, and above all, that you need to be ready to contribute to the world. So to be socially aware is also very important. When a child is groomed through all of these, I think that is a balanced child, where our aim is to prepare a child to be wholesome and being happy with the development of these many parts that I told you about.
Right. I think आपने बहुत अच्छी बात बोली है कि wholesome, overall development is what we talk about, holistic development we talk about. With that coming across, as on today, the mental health and emotional health of children has been gaining a lot of attention. Right. And of lately we are seeing a lot of concerns regarding anxiety, depression, stress has been increasing among the children. Right. So in your opinion, how does our education system are they adaptive or are they equipped to really support these concerns?
So schools, I'm very sure I can speak for myself and lots of other schools that I know, and I'm sure it is spread far and wide amongst the school education and even the higher education. We as institutions have to have our ear to the ground and see how society is changing. What are the demands of society now? How's the home changing, right? So from a bustling family where many generations would live together to now a single unit where both the parents are working. So society has shifted in a big way. And schools have to be adaptive to this change, because the child who comes from a home where large part of the child may have been lonely, in the company of several devices, quite unmonitored. There have been occasions when the child opens the door lock himself, would eat or heat the tiffin, goes for tuitions or any sports or cultural activities, lets himself in the house and wait for the parents. Now the whole scenario, well, this is, if this is how the society is changing, so be it, right? But what is it, what is our role to know the child? To have a relationship where communication is easy flowing between educators and students, to know what the anxieties are, to know what anxieties could be, you know, because before you cannot react to any anxiety. You have to preempt, you have to know that this is how a child is growing and this is the emotional need of the child and the social need of the child. So for example, every lesson in the school must not only look after the cognitive needs, but also the affective needs, right? So, you know, you might be thinking that we are teaching a very, very complex science topic or a mathematical topic, but what is the value there, right? How do you connect it to life? Not in terms of how is it useful in life, but how does it make you usage of this also take care of somebody's social emotional need? How do you make the world a better place to live in? So to be aware as a child that I am studying because of a higher need, right? The need is not only to get a job, but need is to really change the world. And I think that is the knowledge economy that we as schools are creating, where you learn something to make the world a better place to be in.
I think very beautifully you've articulated about, you know, it's a knowledge economy, right? Economy, what we speak about it. And एक जगह आपने एक चीज़ और बोली, awareness. So do you see that mental health more programs has to be run in the schools to spread more awareness, or is it happening already? I'm talking about in a more geographically pan-India or internationally.
I think there has to be more acceptance, right? Because it is an abstract thing, this mental well-being, right? And because young children are able to mask their anxieties. Sometimes, you know, very, very young children say that I'm unable to tell my parents I feel scared or I worry if they haven't called and it's getting dark, but they won't say this to their parents because they feel the parents already have their cup full. So we are, you know, you may be very young in years, but it doesn't really equate to the fact that you don't feel the pain or you don't feel the stress of the parents. And sometimes very young children who should not be are really taking care of their parents in many ways. And they do that by creating a very happy atmosphere. So the parent comes home, sees a happy child. Right? But the happy child has masked a lot of things. Ultimately, why? You know, my parent is a tired parent, right? Has already, you know, when bosses call, school calls, other things happen, the children know the world is creeping to our time as a family, but they are charitable.
I think आपने एक बहुत important बात बोली है मैम, masking, right? And अगर हम previous generation से बात करें, so this generation children know how to mask much faster at the much early age. Right? They also understand the emotions and they're so sensitive about it. So somewhere it becomes also a responsibility for the educators and teachers, also students, parents also, to really know what support they can provide over these concerns. So how do you see them adapting to these changes and how are they you know, addressing these concerns?
We need to be better educated, better prepared, have better systems in which we can help the child before the child calls out for it, know the signals, and to have a safe space for the children where they can be counseled. We have to take the stigma out of counseling. So everybody needs to be counseled, you know, young, old, adult, anybody. At any point of your life, you need to have the strength to be able to say, I have a need and I can approach a person who can help me. So I think if we remove the stigma around counseling in the school and know that we are not only sending our children to study geography or mathematics or physics, right, or to learn a language or two, we need a child to grow up as a balanced individual. That's what you said initially. Where do we strike the balance? If we are unidimensional, that we send the child to school to be learning subjects. That is a very skewed view of things. We send, and I with great responsibility as a school leader know that we are here to also teach subjects. We are grooming a child to be herself,
एग्जैक्टली तो मैम अगर जब हम बच्चे हमारे लिए इज़ अ सेंटर पॉइंट फॉर अस राइट, वही हमारा फोकस पॉइंट होता है, तो आपको कहीं लगता है कि जहाँ टीचर्स एंड पेरेंट्स आर एक्सेप्टेबिलिटी अबाउट द मेंटल हेल्थ है कि डिनाइल मोड में हमेशा रहते हैं?
बहुत लोग डिनाइल मोड में रहते हैं। बहुत पेरेंट्स मैंने देखा है कि अगर उनके बच्चे को कोई नीड है या उनको काउंसलिंग की ज़रूरत है या एंग्शियस हैं, तो वो सब कुछ कर लेंगे लेकिन काउंसलिंग के लिए नहीं अग्री करेंगे। पूरी सोसाइटी में ये एक व्यू है, ये एक मत है, अपरोक्ष रूप से जो आपको दिख नहीं रहा उसका होना एक बहुत शर्मनाक बात है, राइट? तो हम पूरा उस शर्म को फेस नहीं करना पड़े तो डिनायर करना पड़ेगा। बहुत बार मैं पेरेंट्स को बोलती हूँ कि आपको दिख रहा है और मुझे दिख रहा है कि ये नीड डेवलप हो रही है, तो हम इसको एड्रेस क्यों नहीं कर रहे? बट बहुत दफ़ा ये सुनने मिलता है कि मैम ये बात नहीं है, ये आज ये भूखे हैं, ये कल सोए नहीं हैं।
सो मैम, मेंटल हेल्थ इज़ ऑफन इन्फ्लुएंस्ड for the students in a different set of environments will be also influencing it. आपको कहाँ लगता है कि घर आपको लगता है कहीं ना कहीं बहुत डीपली रूटेड होता है बच्चों की इमोशनल हेल्थ इम्पैक्ट होना, ग्रोथ होना, डिप्राइव होना?
एब्सोल्युटली, बहुत कुछ घर से आता है और बच्चे उसको रिजॉल्व नहीं कर पाते हैं। ऑब्वियसली दे आर टू यंग टू रिजॉल्व दोज इश्यूज। दे कैरी ट्रॉमाज, दे कैरी द बर्डन ऑफ parents not getting along. They also carry the trauma of seeing inequality at home, right? They see sometimes, financial difficulties. They see illnesses. So, you have to imagine that child is somehow insulated from all of this. And the child just comes to school as people go to work. And they are able to just work around it, and then they'll start studying subjects for academic success, and somehow then they do, or I think everybody tries to do the best in their lives. We are, I think, internally programmed to do the best, but everything that's happening around us, you hear about, even if you're very young, you have a stray conversation about wars happening around us. A lot of children were really influenced by the Kolkata incident. A lot of my young boys, when we were meeting them, visibly shaken up by that. So whatever happens in society, what happens at home, we all carry it with us. And when we carry it with us, our behaviors change. Either we become introverted and we suppress our emotions, and then it comes out in different ways. It comes out in personality disorders. It comes out in emotional outbursts. We've had many incidents of low blood pressure suddenly, right? Then on top of that is the parental expectation of marks. Now everybody has a different academic achievement ability. And you work hard towards making it better as you go on. But when you're rejected for not having secured the expected outcome or marks, I really think that it is a life all of us have led and somehow have made sense of it. But now it's becoming a more difficult world to live in. It is important for schools and homes to have synergy between each other, and to know that the school has an important role in the child's growth. So the parents should, and I think also the school's responsibility to make the parents feel comfortable and secure, that their child is secure. So I have recently had a parent whose child was displaying very, very aggressive behavior. So the parent also somehow was aggressive with the teachers, and it came a point when I had to intervene, and I was speaking with the mother. And in our conversation, I said, well, I somehow feel that I can see, what you are describing might be ADHD. Right. And the parent said, yes, my child has already been diagnosed with ADHD about a few years back, but I withheld the information from the school because I did not want the child to be labeled. My heart broke into many pieces because that vital information could have been so useful in providing the child all kinds of support. the outcome of aggressive behavior, which became unacceptable to the society around him, would not have come to that if we had been able to provide that kind of support to the child. Yet again, I'm sure that the parent behaved in her experience in the best possible manner for the child. And somehow, I think there should be better communication, that we accept the child and we work with the child instead of labeling any child or ridiculing anybody for having a weakness or two, because we are made of many parts and all parts don't have to work optimally. And so when one doesn't, all the other parts are fine, so why should we label anything? So as society, we should, and there are certain words that we use, even as a form of humor, right? Which is acceptable so far. It is not for young children. They are damaged by each time somebody uses a word to describe their inability to comprehend something at that matter, or react in a particular way, or be tall or short or dark or fair or any which way. If we start labeling the children and start calling them unmindful names, that definitely has a detrimental effect.
तो मैम ये आपने बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात यहाँ पे करी है. मुझे इससे एक चीज़ इमीडिएटली एक थॉट आया दिमाग में. आपको लगता है कहीं हम बुलिंग घर से ही चालू करते हैं?
हमारे ह्यूमर में भी कभी कभी बुलिंग रहती है, so people carry a lot of that, right? Yeah, maybe we can be more mindful, but luckily the teaching fraternity has woken up to this fact. We are very, very clear about the vocabulary that we can use, right? And any word that might hurt the child is to be best avoided. Correct. Yet, the other point is, can you make the home and the school so sanitized of anything that is going to disturb the child, that you make the child not a functional member of the society, because society cannot be controlled. Words have been invented by humankind. Circumstances have been, reactions are, right? Emotions can run all over the place. So we also have to prepare people who are capable of actually going out into the world and be capable of handling it. So those are very important things. Ultimately, we are preparing the children to go out in the world. And the world can be sometimes extremely sensitive, sometimes can be uncaring, sometimes can be cruel. So are we prepared to deal with it? And so to dealing with it is also a very important part of developing a wholesome, holistic child.
हमने बात करी मैम कि एज एन एजुकेशन बॉडी, एज एन एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूट, एजुकेटर्स एंड ऑल, वी हैव चेंज्ड और वी हैव ट्रांसफॉर्म सर्टन वर्डिंग्स एंड ऑल विच वी शुड नॉट बी यूजिंग इट. बट एक पॉइंट हमने ये भी बात करी कि एट होम वी आर टेकिंग द किड्स मोर लाइटली, कैजुअली हम बात करते हैं बच्चों से, एंड एज यू राइटली सेड सर्टन टाइम्स वी लेबल द चाइल्ड, तो कहीं ना कहीं वो बुलिंग फॉर्म हो जाती है. तो एज अ पेरेंट वी नीड टू बी फर्दर मोर एजुकेटेड अबाउट हाउ दे हैव टू बी कंडक्टिंग देमसेल्फ. इज दैट व्हाट वी आर ट्राइंग टू कम डाउन टू?
So I insist on any conversation that I have either with pair or group or individual parents, that you have to role model, right? So you have to be also, there are many things, right? For example, when you are the savior parent, right? Which means anything that is going to remotely disturb my child, I am going to be wearing the cape and running to the defense of my child, right? So when you do that many times, the child would become reliant on you alone, and would not develop the capacity to be able to fight their small battles. So when you're not capable of fighting small battles and you have to run back to mommy and daddy or the teacher, then we are not equipping the child, right? And also then the child would also be judgmental or suspicious. That, oh, you might be meaning this. So we don't have to raise suspicious people. We have to also raise self-reliant individuals. By no means am I suggesting that you can allow your child to be in a dangerous situation, right? Don't do that. But also don't imagine that the world is, out to get anybody, right? Because generally schools are safe places for children. And when they are not, then as a parent, you have full right to reach the person who's in charge, who you can talk about what is the problem and find a solution. It is, when you become a parent, I always say it's the holiest job in the world.
Yes, it is.
And so no matter what else you've been as a young person, as a parent, your responsibility shifts. Just as I would say this to every teacher, you're not a parent, right? You are a teacher, which means you are better equipped to deal with young children because you are the professional, you're trained. And so therefore, everything you say or do has to be very, very calibrated, right? And for us, every teacher is a counselor, right? It is not a special room in the school where counseling happens. Counseling is the air that we breathe. And we counsel so that any knots that in a daily living are formed, they are formed. We see human beings, a child gets into the bus, there's negotiation happening, right? Nobody is ready to give an inch. You have to find your yard, right? So then you come into the classroom, another negotiation happens. And the children of the same age or a age bracket, everybody brings their own history, everybody brings their own geography, they bring their own food, they bring their own language, they bring home systems in the place. And you have to really make a place which is, which everybody blends. So this blending is difficult. It might create a knot. So the teacher as a counselor unknots it on a daily basis. And we send the child home where the parent further talks about it and unknots. And when we get the child, it's a slightly more unknotted child than to begin with. And I think that's very important. And I also tell the teachers, we are first counselors, and then we also teach English. We also teach physics. We also teach maths.
I think I 100% agree with you that teachers are the first aid counselors, right? And एक आपने बड़ी अच्छी बात बोली कि blended. Now, looking at that, in one classroom we have 30 different students, and every child comes from a different social economic background. Now, of lately we are seeing that bullying related to less privileged social economic background has been increasing. And not only, it's just not the social concern, now it's actually becoming an educational output impact, because what the research has been showing, the children who undergo the bullying in a subtle manner or in a direct manner, discrimination, like हमने group से निकाल दिया कि you are not a part of our group because तुम अच्छे से कपड़े पहन के नहीं आए हो, या फिर तुम्हारा बोलने का तरीका हमसे मैच नहीं करता है. And research shows that these children are impacted for a very longer period of time. They are prone to anxiety, depression, insecurity, complex, चाहे वो पढ़ाई में बहुत क्यों ना अच्छे हो, but still they are having the self-doubt in them. Now, education का मतलब ये होता है कि we actually provide the value, respect and equality. So how do you see the schools are actually navigating through this very sensitive and a delicate area to overcome these challenges?
So a classroom is for everyone, like I said. So you have to be, you need to talk in your circle times about everybody who might be different. So inclusion is very important part, and it doesn't have to be drastic inclusion. So you have to include everybody, as I said, first physically. We are also different from each other, and I can speak from experience that if you become suddenly very tall and your peers are still shorter, right? You are the odd person out, right? And you physically start walking with a hunch, because you want to fit in. So fitting in then is natural. Everybody wants to fit in. Nobody wants to stand out as a sore thumb. Even this example of being taller and bending down to really fit in is the best example that we can visually see how being part of a group is important. And so it is important for the school right from the beginning to be aware of it, to embed value systems where we openly talk about differences and we talk about embracing differences. Our country is such a beautiful example of differences of all kinds. The world is another example. But first we start with the classroom and ensure that the blending happens effortlessly, and people are able to talk about maybe if they have a problem with a certain person of any hue, color or social background. If the child is open and say, well, I have a problem, then maybe we can talk to the child and understand where the problem is coming from. And wherever the problem is coming from, home, park, society, lift, we talk about it, right? And so to wish away that it doesn't happen, that the world is whitewashed, it's unique, it's equal, it is uniform, is not true. There are differences. So as a professional body, where everybody is trained to look after social emotional well-being, as well as cognitive and affective and psychomotor, we are professionals whose job is to do this. We do it with empathy and kindness, and we accept everybody ourselves. So first is differentiation of learning, differentiation of being. I think it's easy for us.
Absolutely. I think you have rightly said acceptance. You know, if once everybody accepts, it becomes much easier path to bring the transition over here. Ma'am, now while the schools are actually grappling around the social issues, what we are seeing is another aspect which has brought a huge change or shift in the children's life. Physical transformation. Now mental health, emotional health, a lot of other factors have actually intersected in students' life in such a way that we see a physical transformation has been happening in them. Research has been showing that puberty has been hitting much faster at the lower age, which is impacting children's not only their own personal life but also social life, looking at themselves in a different perspective. Now, such a change which is happening, I think for a school also it becomes quite a shift. So how is school and teachers are adapting to these changes, and how are they supporting the children when they undergo the physical transformation?
We understand the physical changes are about to happen. Children are exposed to maybe one of their friends undergoing, hitting early puberty. And all other children living that, understanding that this is happening, either they feel excluded also, right? That, it becomes a badge of honor and suddenly only few children are excluded. Then the children who hit early puberty, what is the school system? So slowly start telling them about what to expect in the near future. Luckily for us, young parents are also aware. They are well read, they are well prepared. And I think both young men and women as parents, this entire shame around speaking about, certain biological functions is now somehow vanishing. It might still be true. I lead an urban life and live in an urban area. I still am speaking of my own experience that young parents are able to make sense of it and talk to their children. We do the same. We don't wait for it to happen to talk about it. We have our systems, our programs, our teachers. We give them small bits of information so that, and increasingly the information becomes more imminent to what's about to happen, and so that the fear that it might happen or the shame that this is happening will not happen. I mean, we tell them it's natural, it will happen, and it happens to everybody in the world.
So if I go back to my own childhood memory, I remember, it was a very common sight to see the teachers walking with a scale and a stick in a hand. And we were okay with that. As a young children growing up, we were like, okay, ठीक है, पढ़े तो हमें डर लगता था कि किसी के पीछे पढ़ ना जाए. But आज अगर हम देखते हैं, today, things have changed drastically because children are also very sensitive, and corporal punishment has become quite a legal law now, right? But overall, हमारी चीज़ आती है discipline and well behavior, and somewhere take it in a very positive note of bringing that change and transformation in a child. Still, corporal punishment has been used in various schools. So what is the reason? Why are we still not moving out of the corporal punishment and really looking at the positive areas, and what could be the steps can we take it up?
One, corporal punishment shouldn't exist anywhere at all. More damage is caused by any physical force or even a threatening atmosphere where the children feel that the teacher might lose it. So violence can be in the form of one actually touching the child. Now, however lightly you might touch the child, but when there is a contact of your hand, the child doesn't know the impact, right? So I think that kind of threat of fear, I'm so glad that we have stringent laws to absolutely ban it from wherever young children exist. And I think it's only weak people who would hurt other people. And violence, as I, is not only physically hitting, but it is also to threaten that you might be hurt through word, manner, or deed. And I think each is equally worse than the other. So the laws protect the children. The school leadership has to be very careful that, again, train your teachers that children will behave in a certain manner. They are young. They will, to have young children in the class, they will be making noise. Some will be able to complete the work, other would not be. Somebody would be talking more loudly than the other. They sometimes would run around. And then as a teacher of young people, what else would you expect? So what kind of housekeeping rules are set in the classroom, are set in the school? What kind of deterrents are informed to the students? So that if there is somebody who's broken the rule, right? So what systems are set in the school to deter this behavior? And are they informed to the children? Do they know that if I do this, this is the consequence? And it's important to know the consequence, right? But the consequence should be to build a better ability in the children. How would I be able to, when I feel like hitting somebody, how do I control? Can I communicate and arrive at a better understanding? Or if an adult hits, then that's what you learn. That if you cannot control, then you will hit. So early morning today, I was passing by what seemed like a school. As it happens every morning in front of schools, there are traffic jams. And I saw a gentleman in a fairly big car. He opened the door and the child is still seated with the parent. And there are many children milling around. And there are teachers and there are guards on duty. And this parent obviously must have heard some abuses at the other person who looked completely bewildered. He wasn't prepared for this early morning assault. Then as an interested party, my car was moving, but I turned around and see he was already, catching hold of the collar of the other fellow. So now in front of a school, we have an adult losing control, right? So as society, is such acts of violence seen around the children? And if they think that they can get away with it, and that's the answer to any problem. So the school should have systems of deterrence. So we don't have nuisance around on the road or elsewhere, right? Where when they grow up to be leaders, they know negotiation over any violence. So it is important for schools to embed these virtues in children because they are the ones that will make the world outside.
Absolutely. And I think, ma'am, one thing what we have been seeing is the data shows only 14% of the children all across the globe has been given complete, fully protected by the legally, from the violent punishment. So I think we have a long way to go. But I think the first step
is the law, and the second is the will.
Absolutely.
And I think, and the systems, and we should be there.
Correct. So I think the education system has evolved from the very, from the punitive styles, what we had it earlier. And I see a huge shift happening right now, where we are moving towards data-driven decision making. And schools get a lot of data, from the point of view of academic side to mental behavior, a lot of areas we get to know about the child. So do you see this data-driven decision making or the data will be really helping and improving the education system?
So one of the things that I'm very fond of saying is, in God I trust, but for everything else, bring data on the table.
Right.
Right? So yes, data is very important. It tells us what is working, what is not working so far, what needs improvement, what needs strengthening. And for me, I'm quite devoted to data.
हम जब डेटा की बात करें तो ऑफकोर्स यहाँ टेक्नोलॉजी आ जाती है एंड स्पेशली पेंडेमिक के बाद में मोस्ट ऑफ द पेरेंट्स हैड द कंसर्न कि स्क्रीन टाइम बच्चों का बहुत बढ़ गया है वेदर दे गो टू अ चाइल्ड एक्सपर्ट और द स्कूल प्रिंसिपल्स और द हेड्स एंड आस्किंग कि हम स्क्रीन टाइम कैसे रिड्यूस करें बच्चों के लिए. At one point I also believe कि somewhere the phone has also given the liberty to the students to learn more. There are certain apps which really help the children out. certainly there are more apps to give them more of a distraction area too. So do you see now slowly there's a shift happening that where people are looking to go for the dumb phones, which will help them to bring that kind of work-life balance, and also it can really help the students to have less distracted, provided they can use the apps in their laptops and their iPads. तो आपको लगता है कि way forward ये एक चीज़ करनी चाहिए, अडेप्ट करनी चाहिए पेरेंट्स को?
कम से कम ये तो कर सकते हैं कि आपके पास जो भी डिवाइस है, जो भी स्क्रीन है, उसको कितना देख सकता है बच्चा, उसको आप कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि इंक्रीजिंगली हमारे डेटाबेस में इतने बच्चे हैं जो कि एडिक्ट हो चुके हैं स्क्रीन टाइम को. बहुत केसेस ऐसे आए हैं कि वो they've had to fall out or leave school. And it is not an isolated incident. I speak with a lot of educators and they have also experienced the same, which means it is now here to stay. So I think if we are using phones or any device as a nanny to distract the children, so young parents can have a life of their own, right? But once you hand over the device, then the nanny becomes the master. You know, they don't learn anything new from humans because all learning is coming from the screen. And the pixels are so sharp and such colorful things that they're seeing, that now real life is becoming like black and white.
Absolutely. I mean, kids get confused कि real क्या है, real क्या है.
Yeah. So a black and white non-pixelated real life is not as interesting, right? So we have to be very mindful about how much screen time, and that's what parenting is about, right?
Correct. I think आपने बहुत ही interesting चीज़ बताई है, nanny, you know, which is something quite a new word for most of the parents also, which they wouldn't be realizing it, कि they're actually having a digital nanny with them all the time, right? एक जब हम ये टेक्नोलॉजिकल शिफ्ट देख रहे हैं यहाँ पे, you know, among the children and all, there's another aspects which I'm seeing with Generation Z, outgoing Generation Z and the Generation Alpha has been their perspective about their career. If you look at the 76% of the Generation Alpha, what research has been reflecting is that they will be completing their higher education and they will be having more perspective of being their own boss, that I want to start my own as an entrepreneur journey. They have more of an entrepreneur mindset. And being that kind of mindset over here, that gives them more flexibility, ki let me think out of the box, let me have more of the creativity, ideas to be coming in, I don't want to work under someone, let me innovate something new. So there's a shift has happened in the thinking and the thought process wise, and there's more of an ownership that I want to do it. So now such kind of changes, how does the school and the teachers take up that, you know, bringing that change over here and really fostering these minds to really achieve what they're looking at?
So we foster minds, right? Which means that we will provide them all information, we'll bring experts in, and we have no fixation towards what will they do, should they be, you know, leading businesses, should they be working somewhere else. Life will happen. We have to provide them opportunities in terms of projects to be able to run small businesses in the school, to have labs where they will have more financial understanding about, so that when whatever they do, they will have more financial understanding of whatever they have to do with their money. What choices they have to make for their careers, what course of study should they do, because in schools, they have to understand what course of study is they have aptitude for. And they're still too young to know whether they would be, what they would be doing next after higher education. So at the school level, it is about the interests and aptitude that we ensure that both the child and the parents get to know. Again, we do that through data, right? So we map the data of the child across all streams and subjects. And we start showing where the child is excelling. And when we keep sharing this data, there is a time when the decision has to be made where the parents have already known what the strength is, right? And then provide opportunities for independent learning, provide opportunities for collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, do hands-on work. A lot of our subjects are taught through STEM stream, in which child becomes an independent learner, is mindful of her interests, knows her aptitude, makes a fine choice of stream of study, does it well, reflects on the enjoyment. I'm studying this subject. Do I enjoy it? Will it also, then we also allow them to think, okay, this is the stream that you've chosen. What are the options available to you? Right? So you are a step away into the real world of higher education, into adult life, or being a more independent learner. Are you ready to go there? Yes. Right? So are you emotionally ready? Correct. Are you socially ready? Do you know what you are going to study? And if you know that, where are you going to study that? Correct. What is the requirement to fulfill for that course of study? Right. This is an ongoing process that starts from class 8, so that it is that when the choices have to be made, it is not forced or contrived. It's a natural outcome of years of knowing what you're good at.
Schools are doing their bit part. There are a lot of part over here of really fostering their minds in such a very detailed methodology. What school takes it up. But you spoke about financial literacy. Now that is a very need of an hour right now. Right? School does their own part. But how do parents can really make sure that children are learning about the financial literacy and really take it in a more constructive manner in the future? Otherwise, what happens, many times parents say, what, my children has been demanding too much and I don't have that kind of capability to give them. And at one point, over pampering also really results into a lot of discrepancy in the long run basis. So how do you suggest the parents has to get involved in the financial literacy?
So I think it's, if the child is so cut off from reality that there is there's a financial limitation in the house, and yet the child is asking for something that the parents cannot afford or is not feasible, then I think more than the finance, it is the social emotional need of the child. Yeah. Right? And so why can you become, what is it that you can't observe? Are the parent masking it? Right? So you don't mask your life from the child. You don't allow, because you feel I have to whitewash and sanitize everything. So my child doesn't feel he's different from anybody else. I don't think that's a great thing to do.
Absolutely right, ma'am. एक और चीज़ हमने नोटिस करी मैम, जनरेशन अल्फा has got a major strength of adaptability to change.
Then I think teachers are generation alpha. Because the kind of demands on us to change immediately on a daily basis is so much. So in my career that you were saying that I've been in the school for 30 years or more, this is Sandhya 4.0, right? Where I'm not the same educator that I was about 30 years back. So more power to the alpha teachers who have to change so happily and continuously and make sense of the child's world.
Right. So, I think finally I would like to return to the core area where we started off. Balance is the word what we used it when we started off the whole thing. And I think school in India or globally, we are actually balancing the diverse needs of the student population. Whether we talk about special education students to diversified social economic background the children are coming out to gifted children. Every child has got their own unique needs. Now, what steps or what measures or what strategies as an expert would you tell that we can reach out to all children needs, keeping the inclusion also in mind and without hampering any child's overall developmental growth aspects?
The first thing that we all need to do is to know the child, right? So child is made of many parts and each part we need to know of. You cannot be a doctor if you don't know, the human physiology. Correct. Similarly, you cannot be an educator if you don't know the child. Correct. So you have to know the milestones of the brain development. Right. You have to know the milestones of physical development, of cognitive development. Right. And you have to be ready to be of assistance there and then. You also have to know where the child is coming from. So you need to know the history of the child. So when we are doing the result discussions of the children, we don't discuss marks alone, right? We discuss, this is what the child is, this is the attainment, what is the progress? The progress will only be when we know where is the child coming from. So if we know that, there's a bereavement in the child's house, or there is strife in the child's domestic life, or the person is coming from maybe a very small town into a large town, and so you have to see how that is impacting the journey, overall journey, right? And you have to know. So, and you also have to know what you see. You see the child learning, you see an impediment. You as a teacher have to know what is this impediment. You won't have to go to a special educator to find out what's happening. Well, the special educator will do an IEP for the child and assist you to teach the child. But ultimately, you are the teacher. You are the first respondent to any impediment in learning that is seen. And you cannot say, okay, somebody else will come and do this for me. I teach children of only this category. And anybody else below or low is somebody else's job. So first, are we prepared with the correct knowledge of what I am going to see in the child? Which means cognitive journey I know. And I will also know the milestones, and I will also know the impediment. So I know it and I know how to deal with it. I also have in my ecosystem the entire system of special educators and counselors. And I also have my co-teachers, my leadership team. We will co-teach the child, co-handhold the child to reach the best version of that child. We have no version that's uniform and universal. We have every child's best version. And when we see any child through any intervention flowering into their best way, that is what success to me is.
I think आपने बहुत ही अच्छी चीज़ बताई है मैम कि जहाँ पे where I relate over here is जो आपने बताया था कि alpha teachers, adaptability to change, and that's the need of an hour right now. And agar as a teacher we can constantly be evolving ourselves and helping our students to really connect with them. Or kahin na kahin as a teacher it becomes our responsibility to also educate the parents. At the same time, parents need to also understand that parents are the first teachers. So, agar hum ye sare dot ko connect kar dein, तो we are actually helping the child to grow overall development wise. So, Sandhya ma'am, thank you so much. I mean, it was a lot of wisdom what we got from you today, and we covered a lot of ground from the emotional health to the puberty to the technology shift. This has really given a lot of perspective to all our viewers also to really understand the kind of complex need what student, teacher, parents undergo and how to really overcome these challenges. It's been an honor for me to have you over here and to get such kind of insight from you. And to every viewer who's watching this podcast, we need to always keep it in mind that education is not all about grades or about the textbooks. We need to really look at overall supporting the child on their overall mental well-being, their emotional health, and making them a holistic personality. So join us next time for the next podcast. Will be more interesting questions are going to be coming in to understand the rapidly evolving education and the mental well-being. Till then, stay informed, stay compassionate, stay curious. Signing off, Chetan Jaiswal from Beyond Books. Thank you.